Hey everyone, so I just got back from AusCraft, which is a StarCraft 2 tournament in Australia, in Melbourne actually, or a little outside of Melbourne. I wanted to kind of discuss everything about AusCraft because it was actually really, really cool. And I have a lot of really great things to say about it because I think it maybe flew a little under the radar for everyone. And you might just be interested in how the actual event went because it was a really community-based event, very similar to Home Straight Cup, and I think its execution was done very, very well. It's a little hard to find the VODs if you're like, hey, what is it? Can I find it somewhere? Unfortunately, day one, I don't believe was saved, and so far there's nothing on YouTube, but I will link the actual Twitch channels down below so you can also check out the games and also some of the downtime content. So first of all, AusCraft was a 3-day weekend event, StarCraft 2 tournament that happened in Melbourne, Australia. They invited me and Rotterdam to cast. It was a bit of a last minute thing, and by a bit of, I mean an extremely last minute thing, because a couple of casters couldn't make it, the Australian casters couldn't make it, so they decided to invite other people, which was awesome because I actually had a goal to go to Australia for this year, and it just happened basically in the beginning of the year, and it was a lot cheaper because they flew me down there. I stayed a couple extra days, about a week actually, just to hang out in Australia as well, but this video is just about AusCraft. So we were in Melbourne, but actually in a town outside of it called Rye. It was actually kind of like a 2-hour drive, but it was like a beach resort town. It was really, really cool. I think if you watch the VODs, you'll see just how cool it was. The tournament was kind of small. It was 12 players. They invited a couple, literally 2 people from North America, and then most of everyone else was either from Australia, New Zealand, or from places that were able to participate in the WCS Challenger format that kind of included in that region, right? So like Blisk was from Singapore, for instance. It was a 3-day event, as I said. I believe it was 5,000 AUD, yeah, exactly, split between the players, as you can see here. Future ended up winning it, having a really strong performance in one of the, I think his first international tournament, even though it was a bit smaller, and Vindicta, our other North American, was able to do very well there as well, and then Blisk and Notorious Pig. It was really awesome to see a lot of these names that I actually got to cast in WCS Challenger Oceania, whatever it was called, in person. I got to meet them in person, and everyone was really, really cool, and it was nice just to be able to see their development in that region. But the breakout players were certainly the players who ended up winning, especially, I believe, Notorious Pig was kind of an underdog. He is Pig's little brother, one of many, I guess, and he was able to take 4th, which is a big surprise. So those are the spoilers, but just to go into kind of the overall experience, we got picked up at the airport super early. We had someone actually drive us to the mansion in Rye. There was beautiful beaches and scenery, and the mansion was super cool. It was legitimately a mansion. It had a pool and a big yard, and I got my own room, which is really, really nice. And they had like a talent manager and a player manager. Everything was very, very professional. We got treated really nicely in terms of just like, not just accommodations, but also in terms of, hey, do you need anything, right? There was people, I guess you call them gophers, but just people who wanted to help out, who were like, you need anything, we're gonna go to the grocery store, and then you'll say something, we'll be like, we'll try and find it. Very, very nice. The food was fantastic. I actually commented on it to them, saying that this is the best esports catering ever, and they thought it was a joke. They thought that it meant that everyone else's esports catering was bad, and while that may be true, it legitimately was good. They had fresh fruit and vegetables and catered meals, and granted, the pizza they got was a little weird. Not an Australian thing, just that they got weird pizza. But everything was actually fantastic. And it's those kind of touches that really make an event feel very welcoming and very good. But of course, for you guys who actually watch it, it's probably more about the production. And that is admittedly where things were a little bit scuffed. But the weird thing is that, yeah, there were like 3 or 4 drop streams, but they only lasted like 10, 20 seconds. It was immediately fixed. Yeah, the audio was an issue for us, but I think we did a good job just kind of powering through it. We didn't actually have in-game audio, which does really change some things. It's less dramatic without that. But we powered through it, and they were very accommodating. They always tried to ask us, like, hey, do you guys want us to try and fix anything, or you just want to go with it? And they got 4 set mics. That's pretty impressive. These things are really difficult to do. They had an actual production team and a little production room with a lot of switches and bells and whistles, and it was actually super well done. Even though, as I said, there were a couple mistakes here and there. That's to be expected from any time you go into basically a new venue, especially one that's untested for esports. You know, at this point, a lot of convention centers around the world are a little tested. They kind of have the run of things. DreamHack goes around the world and even does new events at new places. But they've got everything on lockdown. For this to have people, I should say, who I believe were involved in maybe some other esports and maybe some like real production stuff like for TV and whatnot, to be able to do what they did in the space that they were doing, like they had, you know, wires every which way and stuff. It was actually really impressive, and I really wanted to give a shout out to everyone kind of behind the scenes for the work that they did, even if there were a couple of hiccups. The people in general were also just amazing. Australia was a fantastic time. Everyone was super nice, but then all the players were also really great too. There's always a little bit of weirdness that can happen when you meet some players or some production, right? They're all in a cramped environment. You're constantly maybe butting heads. That didn't actually happen at all. Every player was super nice. We went to the beach. We had a laugh. We had, you know, some interesting discussions, and everyone was just there to have fun and play StarCraft. And we even found some hidden talents of you know, broadcasters and on-screen camera presence. There we go. In Blisk and Notorious Pig Jr., as they did a really great job on the couch. And as far as execution goes, the actual type of tournament they wanted, I think it was like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. It felt exactly like Home Story Cup, or perhaps even better in some ways. They had an actual bartender, so that was certainly good. And all the players were more than happy to jump on and cast, and some of them were actually really, really good. Very insightful. All the downtime content that they did to make up for the breaks or have on other streams, the B and C stream, were done by a content team. Literally, there was like 4 or 5 people rendering and cutting and editing and grabbing people to do charades and stuff like that. It was all very professional. And yeah, there was a lot of, you know, I guess unprofessional things like poker after hours and drinking on the job type stuff, but that's exactly what they wanted, because everything ended up working out really well and being very, very chill. As far as the games go, they were kind of to be expected for the first 2 groups. Not too many surprises, but I think the playoff games and the overall bracket and results are still a little bit surprising and certainly very interesting. Future and Vindicta were coming in to prove themselves as the American Terrans that are kind of on the up and up, right? And they certainly did that. And then we had a couple other names that are very unknown to the rest of the StarCraft 2 scene, because honestly, Oceania C region just doesn't get a lot of credit. You know, and a lot of that has to do with just how far away they are, so you don't see them at events that often, and now they're even down to just 1 person being able to qualify instead of 2, but also the time zones. I had to wake up at like 5 in the morning, East Coast time, to actually cast the Challenger stuff. And unfortunately, it was also brought down to an online format as opposed to an offline format, which they had in previous years. So it kind of got smaller and smaller in many different ways, but the passion is still there. And obviously, they still have a lot of great personalities coming out from that scene. Of course, we have our casters, Maynard and Pig and Zeph, Moonglade, you know, a time ago, but we also have some really cool players that really got to shine on camera, like literally casting and whatnot, but also with their play. There's some really sick games, especially in those semifinals, that I suggest checking out if you can. To go ahead and wrap this video up, it was basically a 9 out of 10 experience. I mean, except for a couple of hiccups and maybe having a third caster, you know, and preferably an Australian caster, which they definitely want to do. We were just kind of, Rodney and I were just kind of last minute things. That's the only thing I can really think of that can improve. Everything else was so great. You know, even the weather was great, which they have no control over, right? So, I mean, I would love to see AusCraft happen again. I honestly don't know how everything turned out so great, but I'm glad that it did. I honestly don't know how they're being bankrolled either, but I'm glad someone's doing it. And I hope they have the resources and the passion and whatever they need to do another one for, you know, next year. I don't think they're going to do a second one for this year, but certainly next year I'd keep an eye out for AusCraft, and hopefully Maynard and Pig will be available as well to cast. I had a fantastic job. I'd love to be reinvited, but it is an Australian event meant to highlight the Australians. Even if they invited a couple of people from elsewhere, it was more to kind of test the scene, and I think it worked out really well. We got to see, as I said, the the people who we kind of know about, like Azure and Seether, and then we got to see people maybe a little less little about, and we got to see them actually thrive off and on camera. So that just about does it. Make sure to check out AusCraft if you can on Twitch. As I said, links down below. And hopefully maybe they can do some YouTube stuff as well. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who made this come together. For people who invited me. That was that last minute choice, but I am absolutely thankful, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And I hope to see this happen again next year.